We are live. We're starting with a confused look from Ron, but it's Thursday. It's happy hour with Little Nessie. Welcome to our weekly podcast, our show. I'm Dave. My partner here is Ron, as you can see, and our producer in the background is McKenna, we've been on this call now for about 10 minutes, and McKenna is feisty today, so we might have to bring her on extra today. So she
just
got
have
on
the
a
beep
tangent
button
about
ready.
HOAs. Yeah, I need to have the beep button ready, and I've got my glasses on right now. I usually just put them on when we pull up graphs and I have to look at them, but my eyesight feels worse than normal today. Maybe it's from watching Scotland lose last night. Oh, my dear Tartan Army Scottish fans, it was sad to watch, but they're not out yet. But Ron and I are going to chat for about an hour. Ron and I come from the mortgage industry and real estate industry. Collectively, I think we have almost somewhere between 40 and 50 years experience. Ron does his thing, I do my thing, and they are two totally separate things. But here we are. Ron still looks like he's doing some prep work for some topics for today, but we've got some fun topics for you. We're going to chat for about an hour, and we've got about 8 different topics that we're going to chat about. But before we get started, Ron, it's happy hour. So as we usually do, cheers to you, fine sir.
Cheers. You know what we're going to have to do one of these podcast shows is do a drink count. You know, like we should have like a little running total, like a little tote board.
I just do the 120 ounce. So, but we will, Ron is a beer drinker. I'm more usually like a wine or Prosecco or something, because I'm too weak when it comes to beer, because once I start one, I'll be on number 20 in no time. So that slows me down a little bit. But it's early in the day. It's even earlier for Ron. It's 12 p.m. for him. But like I said, we're going to chat for about an hour. We've got some fun topics to go over. We'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Ask us any questions you want. We'll do our best to show your question, and typically it'll be Ron that's responding because he's the smarter of the two of us. But we'd love to hear from you. Let us know. Give us a shout out where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love it if you'd watch it from YouTube, but we don't care where you watch it from. But we're trying to build up our YouTube channel as we step into new areas of growth in our business. Drop us some comments. Let us know what you think of any of the topics that we're talking about. And gosh, the first topic, which is not one of our main topics, but it's a more of a monologue bit where I just pick something that's going on in the news or in my personal life, or what's trending, and I try to turn it into some kind of business lesson. So let's get to those, and let's give you a glimpse of what we're going to be talking about this week. So the first one, it's actually a personal story for me, but I will turn it into a business lesson. I promise. Mostly about social media, but more. So the human behind the label, I'll let you wonder. That is my wife there, but I'll let you wonder for just a little bit about what in the world I might be talking about. The book cover seems a little suggestive there. And then we're going to get into our 3 main topics, which are usually pretty mortgage and real estate heavy. So our first topic, Ron, lead the way with these.
Yeah, this is interesting. There was quite a bit of noise this week about AI loan officers and how they're pricing loans, as well as mainstream articles about how to get the lowest rate. So we're going to talk about that. I'll probably get on a rant. This is fascinating. We're talking about the age of innovation, which hasn't come to housing yet. We're going to talk why not and some of the data. That'll be a good topic. This could be one of my favorite topics. It's about an Indian tribe that wasn't restricted to all these zoning, permitting, and lawsuits, what they're able to accomplish in one of the most complicated places to build in the world.
And then we will get to our rapid fire topics, which we usually try to hit 3 to 4 minutes, but it's not uncommon for us to go over and hit about 5 minutes each or so. So some fun topics in there. So without further ado, boy, oh boy, buckle your seatbelt. Get ready for this one. Here's this week's From the Gut. Alrighty. Now, before I get into this week's topic, I'd just like to point out that apparently I was a little bit ahead of the curve last week for once. My From the Gut last Thursday was about Scotland taking over Boston during the World Cup. At the time, it was mostly soccer fans talking about it. Now it's absolutely everywhere. Major news outlets, famous podcasters, celebrities, everyone has been talking about it. The Tartan Army has basically become America's favorite fan base basically overnight. So I'd like to officially congratulate myself on being culturally relevant for approximately 48 hours. But that has nothing to do with what I want to talk about today. Today, I want to talk about my wife reading smut. Yep, I did just say that. Now, before Kelly kills me, let me explain. If you've met my wife, this is about the last thing you would expect. She homeschooled her kids. She led ministries at our church when we lived in Virginia. She's been in a Bible study pretty much our entire marriage. This is a woman who once refused to have her picture taken while holding an alcoholic beverage drink just in any social setting because she worked at the church and she didn't want someone to get the wrong impression. But one of my favorite stories is the first time she ever cursed in front of her kids. They were, McKenna would probably correct me. I don't know. They were about 8 or 10 years old. And the word was damn it. That's it. That's the scandal. So imagine my surprise a couple years ago when I discovered, not that she was trying to hide it, when I discovered that she was listening to fantasy romance audiobooks. And when I jokingly called them smut, she literally didn't even know. Is that my phone? Let me turn my. She literally didn't even know what the term smut meant. She had never heard it before, which somehow made it even funnier. Now, if you didn't know, these types of books have a spice rating, just like movies with PG, PG-13, R-rated, and then NC-17 past that. For these books, the spice rating is usually done using a spice meter from 1 to 5. The more spice, the more smutty. She was telling me the other day about her recent read, and she told me that she even had to skip certain sections. And again, she's just listening to the book. She's not watching or any of that stuff, but she would even skip some sections, well, allegedly. I asked her what the spice rating was, and she didn't know, allegedly. So I looked it up and it was 5 spices. So as spicy as you can get. And if you've ever seen the Friends episode where Joey catches Rachel reading romance novels, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Rachel, she tries to defend her books by saying it's just a healthy expression of female sexuality. Joey just laughs as she walks away and says, "You got porn." I should have maybe beeped myself because that word might flag the algorithm, but who cares? But every time I think about Kelly's
That would really kill
audiobooks,
our viewership.
that every time I think about her audiobooks, that scene from Friends is what I think about. But before I get myself into even more trouble, her preference is 1 to 2 on the spice level, but that is not really the point. The point is this: people are way more complicated than the labels we give them. Because if I ask you to describe Kelly, fantasy romance novels probably wouldn't make the top 100 things you'd say. But here we are. And honestly, I think we do this all the time. We put people into neat little boxes: Christian, conservative, liberal, Catholic, atheist, business owner, introvert, extrovert. And then we're surprised when people don't fit perfectly inside the category we've assigned them. Because human beings are complicated. We have interests that don't seem to go together. We have contradictions, and that's usually what makes people even more interesting. Which brings me to social media. because I think a lot of loan officers, real estate agents accidentally do this to themselves. Every post is about mortgage rates. Every post is about housing. Every post is mortgage advice, or every post is business related to some degree. Now, don't get me wrong, people need to know what you do. Or if you want social media to work in your favor, they need to trust your expertise. That's important. In fact, it's one of the reasons we do what we do at Little Nessie. We create mortgage content, those educational pieces, the market updates, the compliance sensitive content, the stuff that reminds people what you do as a loan officer. But here's what I've noticed over the years: the content that often creates the strongest connection isn't always the mortgage content, or rarely is the mortgage content. It's the human content, the family story, the vacation picture, the hobby, the dog, the kids, the embarrassing story about your spouse's audiobook collection, the things that remind people there's an actual person behind the profession. Because when people think about the relationships they value most, they don't think about job titles. They think about personalities, the little quirks that make someone unique. And yet, when many professionals get online, they strip all of that away. They become a business card, a logo, a headshot, a title. And then they wonder why no one engages. Because people connect with people, not job descriptions. But don't get me wrong, expertise matters. It's, like I said, one of the reasons Little Nessie exists, to take that load off your plate. Most loan officers don't have the time to research market updates and then turn it around and create educational content. Maybe it's a fear of compliance, or maybe it's that they just don't want to take the time to write the captions or shoot videos. That's our job. We help you tell the mortgage story for you. But here's what we can't do: we can't be you. We can't create the story about your daughter winning a soccer tournament. We can't tell the story about the fishing trip with your son, or the family vacation, or how funny you think it is that your wife listens to fantasy romance novels. Only you can do that. And when you combine both, the professional content and the personal content, something powerful happens. People stop seeing you as a mortgage company or a loan officer and start seeing you as a person they know and trust. And honestly, I think that's why this whole thing made me laugh so much. Not because Kelly reads fantasy romance novels, but because after almost 30 years together, she still managed to surprise me. And maybe that's a lesson we need to learn when it comes to social media. And let this be your challenge this week. If somebody only knew you through social media, what version of you would they know? Would it be just the loan officer or the real estate agent? Or maybe the flip side, do they only know the fun stuff you do on nights and weekends? Because people do need to know what you do for a living, but they also connect with who you are. And maybe that's the version of you that's been missing all along. That's your From the Gut this week.
Another excellent job, David. I have your From the Gut has, generated a couple of thoughts for me. First, you do have to be careful on social media. You don't want to be completely, transparent. You want to make sure that your brand is in alignment with what you're showing yourself. But at the same time, you have to be personable and human. And so, I wouldn't probably post pictures of me smoking, marijuana on the beach, because that probably won't help you. People don't really want that, but they do want to know what's in your heart, and who you are. And you can add a lot of color, but you don't have to be completely transparent, is the first thing. And the second thing, David, we were meeting with a potential enterprise client yesterday, and they were frustrated because they're using stock social media posts that are tired and just don't make any sense. They're not sexy. They're so static, and a million different companies use it. And they're asking us if we can step in and help them have fresh content with really meaningful data, with important signals, and can we translate that into the consumer's view? And that's one of our specialties, and we were selling them on it. And after about 15 minutes, knowing that we have the best product, the person, the decision maker goes, "This is all great, but do you have anything that's interesting? Like, do you have any human stories in there, that you could show us?" And it was such a good point. And thankfully, about 20% of our content, or roughly that, is human stories, highlighting the human. And but it was such a good question to anchor us back. Didn't you think so, kind of, David? Wasn't that such a good question yesterday, or challenge?
It was, but I also like I said, in that from the gut, there is only so much. If you want social media to really, really work for you, you can't 100% hand it off to a company to do it for you and you not be involved, right? There has to be some kind of, if like I said, if you really want it to work for you, it takes some effort on your side, whether that's you shooting a video or collaborating with your marketing person, and telling them about that personal stuff and how to turn that into engaging content and so on. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, the thing, and I don't mean to disagree or debate in this forum, but I think we agree, we can help take them about 80% the way there, or 75% the way there. But that's not total optimization, but that's better than 0%. The
Agreed.
last, 20%, that last mile, is about them showing up. But a lot of people can't go that last mile. And if they can't, I'm not to judge it. My job is to get them as far as we can, which is a heck of a lot further than where they are. Would you agree with that?
I would. I would. I look distracted
Bring it
right
back to
now
smut
because
before we change topics. You know what's so crazy, David?
what?
And smut, I don't know. That's a word from the 60s. I don't know how you got that, since you weren't in here in the 60s. But going back to smut, it's amazing, while our society in general is having less sex and dating less, having less interpersonal relationships, the casualness around what you would call smut is incredible. Let me give you an example. About maybe 6 years ago, hold on, maybe it was even 10 years ago. Maybe
Should I get
let's
my
go 10
beat
years
button
back.
ready?
No, no, about 10 years
Okay.
ago, at the time, my mother-in-law lived with us. So we had, three generations, my mother-in-law, of course, me and my wife and our son. And Sunday, we always had dinner together. And then, the family would gather around the TV and kind of have a Sunday night thing. And I never participated in the TV thing because I'd be prepping, for my upcoming work week. But I remember I was upstairs after dinner. I was upstairs working, and I came downstairs, and my mother-in-law, in her 70s, my wife, let's say then she was in her 40s, late 40s, and my son, who's like 12, are watching Game of Thrones. And I walk by, and it's like I was like a naked man and naked lady having sex with like a dragon. I'm like, and they're all fixated to the TV. I'm like, what is wrong with you folks? You're watching. We got three generations watching porn, and you're so they're leaning forward. I'm like, and like they don't they completely didn't even realize it because they were just so into the story and everything. And to them, it wasn't it. It was just part of the show. But I'm like, holy crap, this is just like a porn show. Like, what are you guys watching? I'm like, this is hilarious. Anyway, it reminded me of that.
McKenna, weigh into that piece a little bit. Tell them your story. And we're way behind, by the way.
I know, but if we're
My
talking about
story
smut, we have time.
about Game of Thrones, or how I was the one that got my mother into smut?
Both.
Well, my mom and I have very similar tastes in books. We prefer story over romance, but if there's romance in it, then that's great too. And there was a series where I was like, "Oh, she'll really like this," but I suggested it to her before I had finished, and there's like 5 books. And at the time, I did not think that she would be interested in anything like that at all. Well, she ended up passing me up in the series, and she was like, "Hey, McKenna, have you gotten to book 5 yet?" And I was like, no, why?" And she was like, there's a there's a big old scene in there. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Well, different series written by the same author. I never suggested that one to my mom because that one had a much higher spice rating. And so I just didn't suggest it to her, and she came to me, I don't know, a few weeks later, and she was like, "McKenna, I just started this new series by the same author." And I was like, "That's great." And then she reads so much more than me and reads so much more than me at this point, and I think it's hilarious that I got my mother into smut accidentally. Oops.
If there's any
You,
women
McKenna.
watching, if there's any women watching right now, and you're into those romance novels, let us know which ones which ones are your favorite in the comments.
Yeah, and McKenna, you're validating what David said about how there's a lot of layers to people. I mean, you spent most of your adult life, in church missionaries, traveling the world, and yet this is a layer to you because you're human. So it's so funny. You want one last story before, so we can just embarrass everybody. I remember one time, Bud and I go to our son Vincent. Hey, Vincent, we want to go to a movie. We're like, okay, you pick the movie, whatever, we'll go. And so he brings us to Ted, which, about a movie about a teddy bear, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting to the left of him, his mom's sitting right into him, he's sitting between us, and the movie is like 25% sex scenes. And I kept looking over to him, and he's like bright red and trying to crawl underneath the seat. I'm like, this is the movie you picked? We're watching a teddy bear have sex with like prostitutes. What do you, how did you, it was so funny, just making him, it was so uncomfortable. But anyway, we probably should get back to mortgages.
Yeah, we've
Maybe.
absolutely destroyed our algorithm with how many trigger words we've used so far.
I know it's gonna kill our ratings too. It's just so bad.
All right, McKenna, let's bring up our first main topic. We ran 8 minutes over on that one. We may have to.
I noticed we didn't get any comments on the smut thing. I thought that might go. I love this picture because this is you gotta love that symbolism of a lighthouse, bringing people safely home during a storm, right? Because there's a lot to that in what we do with mortgages. It's really a chaotic, stressful, emotional environment. And our job is to add confidence and calm and be the Sherpa that gets them home. That's what really our product is. And so the title here is "The Rate Was Never Your Product." That's the whole point. This picture captures it. So we had three things this week reported. First, we had 2 AI companies roll out AI loan officers and AI systems. One was Rollo, and the other one escapes me. Rollo is a completely AI company, AI loan officers that actually is in the broker space. They have 2 Google tech guys that started it. One of their main investors is Y Combinator. The other AI loan officer company, which I don't know why the name escapes me, is also supported by Y Combinator, right? And both of them are, the point is, we create these AI agents. They can do just as good a job as any loan officer. And because we don't have comp related to them, we're going to offer on average interest rate half point below the market. And therefore, you should go with us. And it's interesting because, of course, both those loan officers, I think it's a man and a woman, both those loan officers, both those founders had to get licensed to be loan officers because you need a licensed loan officer in the process. And they're the only 2 people that are licensed, meaning that nobody in that company knows a thing about mortgages. But the unstated thing is mortgages are simple. It's simply a commodity. Whoever delivers the lowest price wins. So then at the same time, same day, Bloomberg came out with an article that said how to get a sub 6% mortgage. And it had 4 strategies on how to get less than a 6% mortgage. But one of the strategy was submit your file, ask for a quote from like a dozen lenders. And whoever gives you the lowest quote, just go with them. And of course, the implication is, once again, mortgage is just a commodity. Go with whoever has the lowest price. And I was inundated with all this. It was all the same day. I'm like, who in the world do these people think that the lowest price is the most important thing? And then it came to me that, well, it really depends on what you think the product is. If the product is the mortgage, if the product is, you go back to 1990s where you got paid to take an application on a triplicate form, and there weren't FICO scores, and you walked it into the savings and loan to try to get it approved, and you sat with the underwriter. Well, the product then was packaging the loan. That was the product. It was a borrower couldn't do it. It's super messy. And then we had this big shift in the marketplace, and FICO scores came out, and automated underwriting came out, and the product shifted to advice, right? We started getting more product types, and so we started to become advisors, right? We went from just clerics to being advisors, which is good, and so our product changed. Well, now in the world of AI, our product is changing once again, because now most there's plenty of outlets where a machine can take an application probably better than we can even answer basic questions better than we can suggest loan products, can do the education piece in 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, does a pretty good job. So what we have to figure out then is what is our product, and what these two companies that have AI loan officers only, and what the Bloomberg article are suggesting, the only product is the interest rate, the mortgage. And my point, and I think I argued this, might have been in that LinkedIn article, is that that's not our product at all. It's not even close to our product. The product is the difference between the very lowest rate in the market and all the things that we do as loan officers to help be the Sherpa, the lighthouse to get people across the line. That's what we pay. That's what we charge for now. We charge for that confidence, that clarity, that education, that the promise of success. Because a unguided home buyer might get freaked out when they get the home inspection report and there's 100 things on them, but there's only one material thing, but they'll freak out about all 100 and they'll cancel their transaction and they'll freak out. Or they'll freak out when there's in a competitive environment and they have to offer, 10, 20, $100,000 above asking price. As a matter of fact, I was listening to Dave Savage's podcast last week with the agent, I forget his first name, De Leon. And he is like, where he in Simi Valley is common that he might get above asking offers by $10 million. But, the buyer freaks out because they thought they could get it below. And who's going to walk them off the ledge and tell them, no, you have to go above, right? Or who's going to be another second set of eyes to make sure that all the third-party services are serving, the buyer the way that they should? Like, we do all those things. And that's why we don't deliver the lowest rate, because it's not the lowest rate. That doesn't help anybody. It's the lowest rate plus all the product, which is us, that we put on top of it. And that's why the topic for this is, the rate was never your product. And if the rate is your product, you're in deep trouble unless you're in a very rate-driven, manufacturing machine. You have to make it about the difference between whatever the lowest rate is and what your value on top of it is. And that's what your fee is, and that's what you need to stand behind and defend. And if you can do that, you can have success. And one last thought on this, David, the way to go with all this technology stuff is, we have talked about it before, and Brian Hale coined this superhuman LO. That's when an LO sits on all the technology, masters all the technology, sits on top of it like it's riding like a wild bull on top of this technology, and then adds their value on top of it. And that value they add on top of it is the price premium that they can charge. But you have to totally understand what your product is. And I think we have a couple of visuals, and then David, you might be able to jump in here and add something to this. So here's the thing. This is from the Bloomberg article. It's simply saying the amount of people that got below 6% rates. And it was something, I don't remember what it was something like 17% people got below 6% rates last month. And they described how they did it. It was builders, builder buy downs. It was them doing some, ARM product. It was them doing cross-collateralized loans. And then it was them just beating the crud out of their lender, shopping like a maniac to get to the lowest rate. And then this next slide shows the Rollo advertising. It's interesting. They're like, yes, we have rates worth bragging about. And then they put Freddie Mac's average interest rate compared to their interest rate. And they go, see, we're a half point lower. And, of course, we don't have a person that can spell mortgage here, but we don't care. You don't need one. It's as simple as possible. And heck, you'll never need hand holding. And it was just the most frustrating thing. Now, David, before I turn it back to you, the one thing I'd say, the bane of our existence, we know we add value above whatever the lowest rate is. And we know the lowest rate, I don't think you're well served going to the Rollo, I'm guessing, because you have really bright people, don't misunderstand me, super bright people, but they just created AI loan officers that they're essentially plugged into United Wholesale Mortgage's tech space. And they're calling that, a peopleless mortgage that can really drive down rates. And who knows? And they've done no loans. And they talk about how they have all this leverage and they negotiate lower rates with all these different wholesale lenders. I don't know how you negotiate when you do no volume, but good luck to you, regardless of that. But I personally wouldn't want to take my loan. I mean, I'm a loan officer. Of course, I could figure out how to do my own loan, but I don't want to take my loan officer there, my rate there, and so it's the craziest thing in the whole world. But one of the things I was going to say, the bane of our existence, is the problem is what we don't know is how to protect our work. See, that's the whole thing. The Bloomberg article really kind of exposed, and it comes down to a value, to you. If somebody comes to us, like David, somebody comes to me and they don't qualify to buy a home. If McKenna came to me, I go, McKenna, you probably can only afford a $100,000 house. The average house in your market is $300,000. So we need to figure out how to get you to qualify. And on top of that, you have really bad, this isn't you, McKenna, but you have really bad credit. You don't have any assets. You're not making enough money. I go, but if you're committed to this, I can help you get to home ownership. No matter how long it takes, I will help you get there. I will show you how you can manage the purchase price by doing whether you're house hacking or whatever it happens to be. I can help you fix your credit. I can start to give, cash to close solutions for you, and I can help you get there. And I might work with McKenna for a year, and I give my blood, sweat, and tears to her, and I get her across the finish line, and we get into escrow, and 2 weeks before close, she shops around the internet and goes, oh, Ron, I know you've really helped me. You've been so great. As a matter of fact, I'm going to send my kids to you, my neighbors, but I got a quote an eighth of a point less than you. I have to do what's right for my family, right? That is obviously the most frustrating thing, and it's happened to all of us all the time. And one of the things we have to do is we have to solve for that. We 100% have to solve for that. Now, in my past life, we had some techniques and tools on how to solve for it, but you have to have super strong sales skills to, attack that. Not only do you have to be super proactive in the relationship, you have to actually get their commitment. You have to get their verbal commitment. You have to say, hey, look, I'm going to help you for the next year. I'm going to spend unlimited time on this. I'm going to spend, my company's spending thousands of dollars to help you. And in the end, we've made this huge investment with you. It's very likely on the last day, you might find a lower rate. And if that's what you're most interested in, then I suggest we split up now. But if you want to stay committed to the process and me, then I'll stay committed to you. You got to get like their pledge up front to help you close that. But David, what's your thoughts on all this stuff?
Well, we got to move on. I had a couple thoughts, and we've got a comment from your brother Mike. But I was thinking of the analogy actually before I get to that. I've worked for 3 retail lenders, and none of which have led the way with rate as their talking point. Now, does it come up? Of course, it's typically direct to consumer that lead with rate. But I was thinking about just how at least in my experience at the companies I've worked for, where loan officers want to advertise their rate, but the company doesn't due to risk or whatever, and how it's evolved over time and where we're at now with AI getting involved. And I had a whole analogy when we went from horse and buggy to cars, and maybe the people that sold the horse and buggies just all of a sudden became car salesmen. But we are out of time, Ron. Or did we have? We showed both slides on that one, so I say we move on.
Fine, because I went long. We were only 3 minutes long on that time. We went 8 minutes long on yours.
Yeah,
come on now.
we went 3 minutes long on that one, and we went 8 minutes long on the From the Gut with all the stories about smut and all that kind of stuff. So let's move on. Main topic number 2. No, I didn't start it. You started it.
All right. You started it. I love this. Here's the strangest thing, and somebody understand this. We're going through this age of innovation. I mean, what the heck? SpaceX created, a process in which a pair of chopsticks catches a falling spaceship from the sky, saves it, and puts it on the ground. Like, whoa, whoa. Are you kidding me? The medical breakthroughs, all crazy breakthroughs in quantum, computing. I could go on and on. It's crazy, right? Then why does it take the exact same amount of time to build a house today as it did 50 years ago? How does that make sense? How can you explain that to me? And what makes it worse, per employee productivity for new home construction workers has fallen 30% in the last 40 years. And you know what makes it worse? In that same time, the average productivity per worker in America has doubled. Because 50 years of innovation, and it still takes the same time to build a dang home. That is crazy. And our people building a home are less productive than ever. Now, in all transparency, we have improved a little bit because it went from 8.6 months from start to finish to build a home. That was the worst it's been in 2023, just 2 years ago. And we have improved by about a month. So we're down to 7.5, which still is an all-time worst other than in 2023. I mean, you could build a home faster in 1960. David, does that make any sense to you? We can catch up time on this topic, but does that make sense to you?
Where is it taking them 7.5 months to build a house? That's not my experience. Is that a real
Like
statistic?
permitting and stuff is a month and a half, and then like there's a chart. We don't have the chart. It
Okay,
takes
yeah.
forever. It takes for, and you know what?
Okay.
We haven't allowed any innovation in how you build a home, and we restrict any type of manufacturing, like offsite manufacturing, and now the road, the 21st century road to housing is going to fix some of this if it ever gets passed, which it will, most likely in the next week. But it's just crazy. And my LinkedIn post on this was, not only was it titled "Why Not Housing," but let's let innovation come to the housing sector. Like, let it come here, right? Like, let's fix this. It cannot take 8 months to build a house in the United States. It's not that complicated. David, you and I, if we were unfettered, could go into your backyard and probably put a lean-to up in about 2 weeks. We don't need to take 8 months. I mean, how silly is that? The cost to carry is ridiculous. But David, I'm not going to get on a rant, and we're going to catch up a little time unless you want to talk about any more of this.
My initial reaction was shock when you said 7.5 months to build a home, because I'm just thinking the simple from the time that you break ground to the time that it's done. But yeah, if you include all the permitting and all of that stuff, then that makes sense. But it's still, I've moved into 2, 3 neighborhoods as they're being built, and I've seen them go up in like 2 months, if that.
Yeah,
So
7.5 months, David. I mean, that's the hard fact.
yeah. So I don't know. Do you think the goal is less permitting rules and structure and government involvement, or are you thinking that the innovation should come from like the 3D building, or what's it called?
Yeah. I think it's all
Yeah.
of it. I think 3D. I also think more than that, David, is offsite manufacturing. What's
Yeah.
been proven is the quality of offsite manufacturing beats the quality on onsite manufacturing. You actually build better homes, build the components offsite. Now they're starting to do more of that, of course, like the trusses and stuff, but do huge swaths of it. It's just like, on a cruise ship, you know what they do? They build those each. It's like a giant Legoland thing. They build every single cruise cabin in a factory. They ship it, and then they just snap it in, and then they can build a cruise ship in like a 20% of the time they used to do it. It's just like one big Lego, right? Now, I'm not saying that's how you build a home, but it's not all that complicated.
Yeah, because those homes were once kind of looked down upon, but they've made advances significantly. And would you say, I think people shit on the construction quality these days of homes with 2x4s, and building materials have gone downhill, but the standards have increased as far as the structural integrity. But I think that the materials have probably gone downhill than when a 2x4 was actually 2x4 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I read an article recently, and it said that manufactured housing has like a 60% better secure safety and security to a Category 5 storm than a site-built home. Just is so much,
Wow.
There's fewer errors. It's just because it's machines doing it, right? And they're just really put together well. But let's move on. Let's go to the next one, because we have a great topic next one. We're probably going to go over, so let's save some time.
The city that said yes.
So it's interesting. I was in Vancouver, maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and we were in the Uber going from the airport to our hotel in the harbor. And as we're coming in, on the hillside across the harbor, the driver goes, that's the most expensive place to live in the world, right there. He goes, as a matter of fact, people from LA come here to get price relief. I'm like, really? I don't believe that. Like, I did not believe what the guy said. I'm like, no, I don't believe that at all. You're on Lululand, dude. But he was talking about the housing and how expensive everything was. And it turns out Vancouver is the most expensive city to live in North America, by far. I mean, by far, by the way. It's not even close. I don't remember what the stat is, but it takes, here's the stat. It takes almost 12 years of the median income in Vancouver to buy a house. And, the historical standard is 3 years, and it's 12 years. And that compares to, I think Los Angeles is 7.8. San Francisco is 8, right? So it's very crazy expensive. The reason why is there's all these regulations that make building homes nearly impossible. The thing here you have to realize, they're all done with the best interest, the community's best interest in heart. It's like, what happened? One little thing, like, okay, that makes sense. We're going to protect you. We're going to protect the community. Okay, we're going to pass this ordinance. We're going to pass this ordinance. We're going to pass this ordinance. And over decades, there starts to be thousands of little like nicks that get you to prevent building. And I'll give you some examples when we get into this particular thing. And so what's happened is, Vancouver, it's become impossible to build anything but a single family home. And even a single family home takes forever and costs $1 gazillion. So something really, really interesting happened. And I'm going to butcher these names. So don't, a matter of fact, McKenna, you can already start beeping
Keep
me
them on track.
correcting me. But this Indian tribe in Vancouver that was really jobbed by the Canadians, meaning the Canadians had relocated them, and in the treaty, had set aside a few thousand acres for them. And then that was like on the edge of Vancouver. Then Vancouver started expanding, and so the government just took the eminent domain, that territory back, and said, "Sorry guys, we didn't really mean it." A century later, the Indians take the government to court, and the court finds, yes, the government really screwed you. They stole your land, and they made them pay $82 million. That's not interesting. The interesting part, and by the way, the government must give you this open 10-acre lot in the middle of the city. And so this Indian tribe, which I'm not going to try to pronounce, Squamish, I think, the Squamish, and I know I'm not saying Indian tribe, native tribe, got this 10-acre lot. Well, flash forward to today, and that was like 10 years ago or something like that. They're not restricted by permitting. They're not restricted by zoning. They're not restricted by lawsuits. They're a sovereign nation. So they can, all those, not in my backyard people, boom, they have to follow it. All these, permits. And so you know what they did? They built 6,000 units on 10 acres. And the city desperately needs those units, but unfettered by the legal chaos and the restrictions. Part of the things, what they did? They're like, this is the middle of one of the biggest cities in North America. You know what we don't need here is parking. People take public transportation here. So on these 1,000 unit condos, we're putting in 100 parking spaces and charging people up the kazooie. You know why? Because then we're going to build 2 more layers of actual condos, and and so they jammed 6,000 units. And by the way, these buildings, which you have pictures of, they're actually beautiful. These pictures don't do it justice. They're going to have, I think it is 11 towers. 11 big towers. They have, by the way, they do have like 10% of it towards affordable housing. They do have some mixed use. It's a cool community. They don't have a ton of open space because it's only 10 acres. They just jammed it full of beautiful, modern housing. Now, what had to happen, really interesting, they just weren't completely unregulated, but they're regulated by their own tribe. And so every single planning thing had to be approved by the tribe. That is the members of that nation. And so that was a restriction. Other than that, you know what this Indian tribe wants to do is they have 3 things. They want to make money, right? That's what they want to fund their tribe for the next couple of centuries. They want to make money. They want to help solve a problem with humanity, which is housing. They say clearly that's in the whole deal. We're going to solve this, and we're going to show people how to do this. And they're also trying to link this housing development to their history. Like if you look at the architectural design, it means something to the tribe, right? And so the topic here is let people build. And what they're hoping, people around the world are hoping, is that the other governments will go, hey, you know what? One, maybe we're the problem. Maybe all this do-goodism is actually hurting people. And this isn't from a New York Times article. The New York Times, which is no conservative paper, was arguing, the opposite of doing good to someone is hurting someone else. And and hurting someone else in this case is preventing somebody to have livable housing, right? Like my restrictions, I'm protecting all these single family residences. I'm not letting them go, high density. I'm not using best use, right? And so I'm protecting those people, but by protecting them, I'm preventing thousands of people to get the housing they need. And so it's super interesting. But the hope is that this example in the community is called Senequa. I don't know, it's SENAKW. They're hoping that this example will show other governments that they just simply get out of the way. There are easy solutions if you just get out of the way. But David, what do you think about all that?
This sounds magical, and gosh, I wish a lot of our country was like that, but it's not. But I also think about, how did we get to where we are now? And I don't think it was one decision that was made that got us here, or one person that was in charge, whether it be the president or whoever. The National Builders Association or any of that stuff. I think where we're at now is the result of just thousands of little micro decisions that are made, and one spirals and gets to the other. But I think every city probably gets to a stage. In Charlotte, my hometown right now, um I'm just outside of Charlotte, but Charlotte and its surrounding cities has just exploded in the last dozen years. But I think every city that's similar to Charlotte will get to a point to where they have to decide whether it values preservation or growth or sustainability. And so, my question back to you, Ron, is if every city approved projects like this, what would affordability look like in your average US city right now?
Yeah, well, David, whenever you bring more supply in, when supply can outpace demand, prices will drop. I mean, it's just
Right.
a simple economic law, right? And David, your comments are spot on. It comes down to as simple as this: who is government protecting? Who are they serving? Like, it makes sense if you're a homeowner and you live in a beautiful community. You don't want to have the projects built at the end of your community. You don't want to have the halfway house. You don't want to have the 6,000 unit thing at the end of your community. You want to preserve what you have. So it comes to question: what's government's role? Is my government's role to preserve my current constituency, or is my role to actually protect our population? To serve our population. And it's all, but by the way, and it's not evil. We got here from people doing good, do goodism. That's what it was. It wasn't evil intent, but we just have to know that. And I think it was in my LinkedIn post. I said, look, people pass all these rules, they support the rules, they pass the rules, and they get frustrated that there's not enough housing. Well, at some point, you just have to own it and go, I'm the problem, because it's not government is us. That's another point. Government is you and me. And we condoned our government to do this. We might have actually supported it, encouraged it, and got us here. And at some point, we have to own it and go, God, we really jacked this up, man. Let's just untie these knots and start over, in my opinion.
Yeah. Um, Mike, I appreciate your comments. Let's show you've commented a couple times now. But hey, Ron, he says, connecting dots. Let's let people build and use technology to help solve these problems, build faster, remap regulation from top to bottom. I think we fully agree.
Yeah, what's so interesting, Mike? I've had ongoing discourse with, let's just say, some of the industry leaders and compliance leaders, and their position. It doesn't exactly hit on what your topic, but it's really interesting. Their position is, the government will never allow there to be a fully autonomous AI loan officer, because it takes away all their power, the government officials' oversight power, right? And so they don't want to lose their power. And so they're going to mandate it, keeping it the old way. And when you ask about AI, which can certainly solve a lot of these community issues, once again, it's not that we don't have the technology to solve it. The government's not going to accept it. They're not going to accept going, hey, you're really irrelevant right now, step aside, unless the people really push it, and that's what's really important, because the government officials, their desire to protect themselves is going to override their desire to do good from the community a lot of times, and it's going to take force to make them change.
All right, let's move on. Rapid fire topics. Yes, or were you done
David,
there,
this
Ron?
first one's going to be super fast, I think.
All right, the
We're
forgotten
going to catch
first
up on
timer.
rapid fire. Yeah,
All right.
this is so good, and this came from I think NAR's 2026 legislative meetings, and so the deputy chief economist Jessica Lotz, LAUTZ, came up with this really interesting comment, and her part was, hey, look, all you real estate agents, you're missing the boat. You're missing the forgotten first timer. Like you're not serving the actual biggest market segment there is. You're completely ignoring it. And of course, the audience is like, ooh, what are you talking about? We try to serve first timers all the time. She's like, no, you ding dongs. By the way, I'm saying that's not her. But if I was saying, you ding dongs, the forgotten first timer is the first time seller. And she goes on to say, I'm just going to make up statistics. I'm sure we're going to show them. But like 80% of people selling a home have never sold a home. And if they sold a home, they sold a home 40 years ago. And if they're selling a home, the people advising them are, people that sold a home 40 years ago. And so what she's learned from her own experiences and feedback from other agents is that when they're helping somebody sell the home, those people ask the most simplest questions like, oh my gosh, whatever happens to be, they ask a bunch of really naive questions because they simply don't know what it's like to sell a home. And her point was, look, if you guys crafted like a marketing plan to reach out to these people, to give them confidence and clarity, to educate them about how to sell a home, you'd probably create a market today. But those people, it's not just that they own their home free and clear. And it's not just they love their home. It's not that they have a lock-in effect. It is that they don't know how to sell their home. They've never done it. And it's a big deal. So reach out and start helping these folks. And this, of course, extends to loan officers now, right? Because a lot of their questions has to do with equity. Can I buy before I sell? What's my tax implications? How do I intertwine my assets into my estate? All sorts of stuff that we can help with. And it's just a huge market. And I really love this angle. It was very clever and I hadn't seen it before. Dave, what's your thoughts?
I'm wondering what the motivation of this article is. Is it just a true kind of passion for first time sellers, or is it a business related thing to try to turn sellers into your future client buyer and so on? What's kind of behind this article?
So Inman was simply reporting on the deputy chief economist and also the chief economist Lawrence Yun. They both spoke at this legislative meeting. So they were just reporting on their keynotes. That's all they were doing. So Inman had no stake in the game. Now, it's interesting. What was Jessica's point in bringing this up? Her point
Right.
was I think her point in reading through the transcripts was, look, there's plenty of opportunity out there, but you guys are just fishing in the wrong place. And she, by the way, I think she cited like 9 other micro markets that, or she called it client profiles that agents are missing. She goes, you aren't adjusting to the marketplace. And so you're feeling more pain than you need to, which I thought was very, very clever. I didn't think the other 9 were as strong. I really like the first time seller, but it was just a fresh look who you wouldn't really think you get from an economist.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that point of view. And to your point, I don't know what her motivation was, but I still appreciate her point of view.
What's the do you know roughly off the top of your head what the breakdown is between buy side agents and seller side agents? Because I know a lot of them will do both, but I also know that there's a specialty, or some people only focus on one or the other. What's that breakdown look like?
Well, David, it's very fluid to the market. When the market
Yeah,
is
sure.
short, sellers, then people want to work with sellers. If the market is
Sure.
short buyers, then people want to work with buyers. And so you can't say it's half and half. And there aren't, so you can't say that. You just know it's fluid with the market to where the opportunities are. And right now the opportunities are starting to sway towards buyers. Buyers are worth more than sellers. And so traditional listing agents are having a slightly harder time and now starting to create a bigger downline of buyers agents. But it's hard to say. I don't know if you can to say that exactly.
Yeah. We had a great comment from Mike that just really highlights what you just said, Ron. Because I bought my first house when I was, I think, 22, and sold my first house when I was 24. This is staggering to me. Well, not staggering, but eye-opening to me. Your own brother, after 30 years in the mortgage business, just recently selling my first home, humbled by how much of a blind spot I had. And he's been in the business and he knows the industry in and out, but still claims to have that blind spot. Which even the last home I sold, I still had plenty of blind spots. I'm not claiming to be a professional buyer or a seller. I've made some huge real estate mistakes in my life, but yeah, that's eye opening to me.
You
there is an opportunity.
Yeah, I'll say this, and I would love to have the agent that helped us sell our home in Carlsbad when we moved to Carlsbad 5 years ago. And think of it, at the time, my wife had been in real estate for 10 or 15 years. She owned quite a few real estate companies and escrow companies. She was very involved, very successful. She was a top producing real estate agent, 1 year at her very large national company. And
Well,
I had been a part of course, not only had I been a loan officer for hundreds or thousands of transactions, but I had quite a few transactions on my own. And we went to go sell our house in Carlsbad, and we didn't think for 1 second to represent ourselves. And we had a good friend that was literally the best real estate agent in a very specialized market, and I was completely flabbergasted by how much value she brought. I mean, it was more than I could have imagined. And in the end, we didn't pay her nearly enough. And I have no idea what the commission was. I think we paid her full commission or something like that. I mean, Chris, if we didn't, I'm sorry, but she could have charged us twice as much and it'd been worth it. And it was unbelievable. And David, I keep trying to get her on our show, just interview her about her approach. And she was a top agent, like a great agent, right? But how she just gave unlimited value all the time, just naturally, not as a strategy. And how that she built, a business for 30 years, being a, top 1, 2, or 3 agents in that zip code from just relationship and unbelievable value. And so, Mike, I agree with you. And I was so happy that I had the agent I had to help us sell a home, because one, they got to manage your emotion. That's the whole thing. And she acted as a general contractor on the remodel. She told us what to do and what not to do. Then we had 1,000 offers and all these tear jerking, life story things. She told us how to navigate it. She was just so good about all these things that I completely appreciate. And I underestimated, thinking that it was a commodity, not a service like it is.
Yeah, and you're right. We do need, it's been too long since we've had a guest on this show. And Mike, if you're still watching, looks like you are. I just see a number. But Mike, we need to have you on as a guest on our show sometime soon. Let's move on, Ron. We are going to the start, and we're probably going to have to skip or cancel our very last topic. But
we can't cancel another one. Let's keep the last topic because it's super important. But let's go really quick. I'll go really quick, David.
Which one?
Let's just go to the next one. It'll be really simple, really quick.
All right.
So let's just keep it quick. The starter home split. Okay, here's what this is all about, everybody. There was a statistic. The next two will go super fast. There was this headline thing that a record 242 million U.S. cities now have a starter home that costs $1 million. And oh my God, Armageddon. Oh my God, 242 U.S. cities have a starter home $1 million. That's crazy. It's just telling you how horrible the market is, why you shouldn't buy a house, essentially. Right. And that statistic is totally true. And how they derive it is really weird. It's what's the average price of the bottom third of the market. That's what your starter home is priced at. I don't know who came up with that statistic. It's probably a useless statistic, but that's what they use. But if you heard that and you didn't dig into the data, right, you go, man, yeah, housing is crazy. I'm never going to buy a house. But you know what's the craziest thing? You know what the average starter home is on that, using that same formula nationwide? It's $198,000, right? It's not $1 million. Yes, it's $1 million if you go to the chart. Yes, in California, in New York, in New Jersey, in Florida, in Dallas. Yes, it could be $1 million, right? But across the country, on average, it's less than $200,000. So this is just an example where if you're dealing with clients and they're freaking out, oh, I can't afford a home. The average price I read, it was $1 million. You're like, yes, that is one statistic, but a better data point is the average across the country is $200,000. And what matters is where are you buying? That's what matters, not what the headline says. But that's the point, David. We can get out of this topic. You can give us a comment. Let's go.
No comment needed. Let's move on. Did you want to go to the banks cost more to originate, or everyone wants?
Yeah, that's going to be like another 30-second one.
Okay.
Yep. Here's a super shocking. Last Friday, it was the MBA Chart of the week. We can go straight to the chart. It compared the cost to originate at IMBs versus at depositories. And lo and behold, for only the fourth year since they've been tracking this, which includes this year and last year, that banks have a higher cost to originate at $16,320 per loan versus IMBs. And like I said, in the last 50 years, it's been banks have a lower cost, 46 years, and IMBs have a higher cost, only 4 years. And what's shocking about this is that the comp at banks, as we know, is far less than the comp at IMB. And that's the blue part of the pie chart there, right? But what happens is the different allocations the banks are now putting on their mortgage divisions is what's that cost to originate. It's the allocation for the physical space. It's the allocation for the technology. It's the allocation for the overall marketing. That's what's driving it. They're just dumping allocation. It's not, in my opinion, if I was doing a forensic audit, I would say that's probably not real expense. That's an accounting expense. And if I was leading the mortgage division and my bonus was based on profitability, I'd probably be pushing back pretty hard about recalculating how my bonus is calculated. But it's just a really interesting look, and it was unexpected, and it was super interesting. And the thing here, loan officers, if you're an IMB loan officer, or even if you're a broker loan officer, if you think banks have an unfair advantage because they have a lower cost to originate, wipe that off, get that out of your mind, because that's not true at all. Now, the thing is, they can take a bigger loss on a loan because they can monetize that loan 16 different ways. And in truth, their cost of funds are less. And so they can choose to go deeper to get the client they want. And so they can beat your price, especially in the jumbo arena, or in the difficult markets where they have to meet their requirements, right? So they can beat you when they want to, but heads up, they're carrying away more weight than you are approaching the client and rates. David, thoughts on that?
When you told me about this topic a couple days ago, I was like, well, sure, of course, banks cost more to originate a loan. I wasn't surprised to hear that, but then you told me about, I already knew this, that, bank loan officers are sometimes quite often get a base and a tiny amount of points, bips on each loan. But in my head, I was like, well, of course, banks have so much overhead and are typically much larger on average. But maybe I was mistaken. But that was already my assumption already, because of the amount of overhead that banks have, and I guess they have to offload it more onto the mortgage division because that's more profitable.
Yeah, it's both it's a positioning gimmick. What channel, who can they load up the most expense on and not affect their shareholders' viewpoint? Which channels have to make more money, which channels can be more flat, and so it's more of a gimmick, but it was still an interesting statistic.
Yeah. Let's move on. We got one more rapid fire, then we'll get to our last tech tip. There we go.
And David, this one could be 30 seconds.
Okay.
I mean,
then don't ask me for my input.
Well, I do want your input, but here's the deal. And this Lori Mueller, and I'm sorry I don't have a resume in front of me, but I think she might be, I'll look it up, but I'll get it to you by the end. But she came up with this really interesting article that the biggest gap now in real estate, that the crisis that nobody sees, is actually real estate agent participation. And here's what it means. Real estate agents are constantly complaining, I'm not getting trained, I'm not getting resources, I'm not getting coached and managed, I'm on an island, and boo-hoo, right? And yet, since they're self-employed contractors, the truth is they're not showing up for all these things. They're not going to their broker sales meetings. They're not going to the training meetings. They're not plugging into coaching and mentoring. They're not going to the product education or the compliance. They're simply not participating. They're just acting independently. And so the crisis in real estate is that these agents don't have the preparation to have the success they want. Even though they're complaining about it, they refuse to plug in and actually, benefit from all these things, which is such an interesting thing. And this simply just repeats that. So it says the leadership problem is no longer access, it's actually engagement. And it's really hard to engage a bunch of self-employed, contractors. And so that's a very interesting trick going forward. And so many of them are going for outside training or coaching, which really just feeds them what they want, not necessarily what they need. David, what's your thoughts? And we can move on.
Let's move on. No heavy, insightful, valuable thoughts on that one. Let's get to this week's AI tech tip of the week. Keep saying that wrong.
I love this topic,
Yeah.
David. That's why I didn't want us to punt it. And I love the opening slide, Oprah meme. You get a SaaS, you get a SaaS, you get a SaaS. Everybody gets a SaaS, right? And that's software as a service. And here's the point. What's happening now, and what's really interesting, what the tech industry craves is subject matter experts that have years and years of experience in the subject, because the compute is easy now. The actual coding is easy now. The subject expertise is hard now. And so there was an article, I forget who was the article in. Do you remember off the top of your head? I will tell you
I don't.
in 1 second.
I can't.
The article was, oh, dang. The article, so sorry. I just screwed that up. The article, I'm screwing this up so far. So sorry, guys. I will get this now.
I think I can kind of.
I had it in my thing. It doesn't matter. The article, I know where I have it.
Ron, you look at it for a second. Let me tell our audience, hey, we haven't done this before, but going forward, most of our topics that we talk about are driven from articles that Ron reads throughout the week. He shares them with me. We have some back and forth of which will be good to actually have some engagement conversation going forward. Within 10 minutes or so, or 15 minutes or so of us finishing the show, we will add every single link to all the articles that we talk about on our YouTube page. So if you're not subscribed to the Little Nessa YouTube page, do that. If you ever want to dig deeper into any of these topics, because we use information from a ton of industry experts and economists and forecasters and so on. So if you want to see those links and dive in a little bit deeper, look at the charts for a little bit longer, or zoom in on them, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to that, and we'll post those links to every single article that we reference in this show within about 15 to 20 minutes of the show's ending. Ron, continue.
Thank you, David. Thanks for buying my time. So this comes from Elena's Growth Scoop. The title of her post was "The Mom and Pop SaaS Era Has Arrived." And the theme of the article is non-technical teams can launch their own stuff. And so the idea is, if you're a subject matter expert and have just rudimentary, like just comfortability with some of the AI tools, you can now create your own CRM solutions. And by the way, a CRM solution might not be, I'm going to replace Salesforce. It means, hey, Claude, Codex, Coworker, hey, can you please, figure out, I want to be able to do my CRM to do X, and I want it to talk to my, POS system or LOS system, and I want it to do XYZ. Can you please create a program that does that? And it will do it. Like, you can just vibe speak it into the world, like speak it and it will come. And so the point is, if you have expertise in this, you can now create stuff unbelievably fast. And so the whole part of this, the topic is, when loan officers get tired enough of having to deal with, like you ask, I'm not gonna pick on Encompass or ICE, or I'm not gonna pick on Salesforce or Total Expert or whoever it is. Like, can we please get X done? And you try to put it on to your IT department and do the integrations and all that stuff. In the future, if you have any bit of savvy at all, you'll figure it out just one night after a couple of beers, and you'll talk it into existence. And you know what? That might actually become a product that you can monetize back into the industry. And that's the whole point, where you get SaaS, you get SaaS, you get SaaS. And the part that mom and pop SaaS area has arrived, well, it's going to come here to the mortgage industry. And David, I'll tell you, I've been out, doing some site visits, and I'll bump into some loan officer and like some, office in the back. And I'm like, hey, what are you working on? And they're like, oh my God, I just created this chat bot, or I just created this process to data mine off my thing. And I got automatic marketing, and I just got AI agents doing outbound phone calls. And I got this. And they're like, well, how'd you do that? Like, I just, used, Claude, and I just told it what I wanted, and it just developed it. I'm like, holy smokes. And we're just at the start of that. And the point is, it's coming. And if you want it, if that excites you, get into it, start playing with it, go speak it into existence. Not only will it make your process better, you may be able to monetize it. So David, what's your thought? That's why I wanted to give away that topic.
I've got one last thought, and what I'm thinking about what I was thinking about as you were saying that is software in general, whether it's AI or just general, as we've known software, the term software historically, but the best software usually starts as someone scratches some kind of itch. And I will say this, and um, Ron and I have been building an AI product now for close to a year. It hasn't been our full-time focus, but we're it's actually it became just kind of an idea, then a thought, then a maybe one day, but we've been actively working on it now for about 2 months. Prior to that, it was more of like a part-time, we'll get to it when we get to it. But we've been actively working on it for 2 months. And Ron is kind of leading the way on the AI port, or we're on a significant part of the AI portion for the content generation. And when I said that, the best software starts as someone scratches their own itch. I can't tell you how many times, and Ron, forgive me, I'm just going to brag about you for a second. But I can't tell you how many times over the last th- 2 months or so where we're discussing the launch of this new product, where Ron has spent an entire weekend, 20 hours, 40 hours learning new systems because he was interested in this and that and this. And he now has a whole new vision on Claude or Gemini or what you name it. You find those, you find a problem and you want to solve it, start exploring that AI, and you will find that your eyes will be opened. McKenna's probably rolling her eyes because she has a disdain towards AI. But you have a problem, you want to grow your business, find that scratch and start to itch it, and you would be surprised how many doors will open and how many efficiencies you will find. So there you go.
Yeah, thank you, David. And let's look at our one chart here because I find it interesting. It says, 4 and 5. This isn't Lovable, and Lovable is probably the easiest code, platform to use. That's the one that really was born. You speak into it, and you speak it into existence. But 4 out of 5 of their users have a non-technical background, meaning they're subject matter experts that are trying to get a solution to a real world problem, and they're just explaining it to the machine and go, "Can you solve this problem?" Right? So 55% of these users have at least 11 years of experience in the field that they're trying to get the solution to. So like 11 years experience in mortgage, I have a problem, my CRM isn't doing this one thing, I go on Lovable, I explain it to it. That's 4 out of 5 of their customers, right? And so of these people, these are subject matter experts in their professions, right? Of them, roughly almost 80% think they can monetize what they're building in Lovable, which is crazy. And 35% of them already have monetized it. That's the whole point, David. It's like you could be some old school loan officer that sees a problem, and there's a whole, this because you manage tech stacks, they never integrate right. And you see, hey, if you could just do this one thing, it'd be nirvana, and you never can get that done. But today, you can go speak it into existence, get it done, solve your problem. Now you're a more effective LO. And by the way, you may be able to sell it or monetize it someplace. So how great is that?
Yeah. Agreed. You know what I just realized, Ron?
What's that?
I think we've only had McKenna on once, maybe 2 times max, this whole show. Is there a reason
McKenna, you
for
want
that?
to come on and talk about HOAs?
Yeah, come on as we close the show out.
I thought we were talking about not wanting to get I don't know, demonetized, because if you get me to start talking about HOAs, we're done.
Well, okay, what topic, McKenna, what topic resonated the most with you today?
I mean, I really liked the one about the native tribe, where they took the opportunity that they were given after fighting, well, not given, after they fought for it, and turned it into something so amazing. So I thought that that was really cool, and I also really enjoyed doing that video from the article that you posted. So I really like that topic.
Yeah, it's an amazing. It gives you hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else before you want to wrap it up for us?
You didn't love my From the Gut?
That too. That one was great too. I don't know how much that one spoke to me.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. Mike Stowers, you're a champion with the captions or with the comments this week. We only showed a couple, but I've seen every one of your questions on there. We appreciate your engagement. We appreciate you watching. Ron, I've had fun this week. It was a good week, and we'll be back next week. So I thought you were going to say something. I was leaving the door open. That's all right. These shows, so it is possible to go live, but you're not actually live. You can pre-record video and use certain platforms and pretend to go live. Ron and I are 100% live right now. And you probably get that from all the flubs and all the mistakes and all of that stuff, how raw it is, but we are actually live. It is 4:20 p.m. for me in the East Coast, and Ron, it's 1:20 p.m. for you, close out on the West Coast. I guess you're technically in the West. Is Phoenix, Scottsdale, West Coast technically? It is, right?
I'd call it West Coast, even though we're not on the coast. Yeah. It's in the West.
All right,
we're in the West time zone right now.
Well, if you've joined us, I said just 10 or so, my audio's going out, 10 or so minutes ago. Ron McKenna, are you hearing audio issues with me?
We can hear you, but you're cutting out. So let me wrap this up, everybody.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks to you for watching. We appreciate it. Follow us if you like. Click on the links we're going to put up if you want to get to the source content. We'd love to help you if you want to get content out in the world that's unique to you. So connect with us that way. And with that, we'll be back next Thursday. David, great job. McKenna, great job. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. See you next week.